Everyone's talking about Miss Jamaica right now because 4 months after that frightening fall at the 74th Miss Universe, Gabrielle Henry is finally out of the hospital. And that sounds like the ending people wanted. It is not that simple. This update feels so heavy because it arrived without a comeback date, without a big public appearance, and without any clear sign that life has settled into place again, which means the headline sounds hopeful while the full story still feels unfinished. That is why this does not land like a routine recovery update. Miss Universe Jamaica organizers Mark McDermott and Carl Williams confirmed that Gabrielle has been released from hospital and is continuing to recover under medical care, yet the public side of her life still appears to be paused, which tells you right away that this is not one of those stories where someone disappears briefly and comes back smiling as if nothing happened. People are still watching because what happened to her was public, abrupt, and terrifying, while the recovery has been private, slow, and much harder than many first understood. Tell me what you think changed most for Gabrielle after that fall, and drop your thoughts in the comments. If you have been following this story from the start, like this video, subscribe and stay with me, because once you look back at the full timeline, the news that she is finally out of hospital feels even bigger. Most people remember the clip itself, but far fewer remember the medical details, the fallout afterward, and how deeply her real life was disrupted long after the cameras moved on. Before that night in Thailand, Gabrielle Henry was not just another contestant hoping for a strong walk and a few flattering headlines. She was Miss Universe Jamaica 2025, and her legal team later made clear that she was also working as an ophthalmology resident while founding the See Me Foundation, supporting visually impaired Jamaicans, which gives this story a very different weight. Because the fall did not only interrupt a pageant run, it also cut into a serious career that demands years of focus, training, and discipline. Once you know that, the whole thing stops sounding like pageant drama and starts sounding like a life getting knocked off course in real time. November 19th, 2025 is where everything changed. During the Miss Universe preliminary evening gown competition at the Impact Challenger Hall in Phuket, Nonthaburi, Thailand, Gabrielle fell through an opening in the stage while doing her walk. She had to be taken away on a stretcher, and she was unable to compete in the finals the next day, which meant the event kept moving while her own future had suddenly been thrown into doubt. That contrast stayed with people. One moment the stage was all glamour and polish, and in the next it had turned into panic, confusion, and a scene no contestant should ever have to endure. What made that moment stick in people's minds was how quickly the mood changed. The footage looked disturbing right away, even before anyone had the full facts, because viewers watched a woman in the middle of one of the biggest moments of her title, reign, simply disappear from view, and then saw staff rush in while the room tried to understand what had just happened. Nothing about it felt small. That is why people kept replaying the clip. Not because it was dramatic in a cheap way, but because it felt like one of those public moments when you can tell immediately that something is seriously wrong. The story grew much darker once the medical details became public. Gabrielle's injuries were described as an intracranial hemorrhage with loss of consciousness, a fracture, facial lacerations, and other significant injuries. And reports said she had been admitted to intensive care at Paulo Rangsit Hospital in Bangkok, under constant neurological monitoring with 24-hour specialist supervision, which makes it clear this was never a situation where someone was shaken up, checked over, and sent home. Those details changed the tone completely. Once the public heard that, the long hospital stay stopped sounding surprising and started sounding like the only outcome that made sense for something this severe. Her family's presence during that time added another layer of emotion. Gabrielle's mother and sister remained with her while she was being treated, and the organization also said it was covering major medical, rehabilitation, and travel-related expenses, which gives you a clearer picture of how serious the situation looked behind the scenes, because those kinds of arrangements are made when a case is prolonged, complex, and medically demanding. That matters a lot. It means the frightening clip people saw online was only the visible edge of a much larger ordeal that played out over weeks and then months. The medical crisis alone would have kept people interested, but it was not the only reason the story stayed alive. Reports later said Miss Haiti, Melissa Sapini, claimed contestants were called into a meeting where a staff member suggested Gabrielle had not been paying attention, while the Miss Universe organization later rejected any suggestion that Gabrielle contributed to the incident. And that back and forth landed badly because once someone is badly injured in public, people become extremely alert to anything that sounds like blame, drifting toward the person who got hurt. The controversy gained additional attention when Miss Universe 2024, Victoria Kjær publicly supported contestants speaking out about the incident. That changed the conversation fast. From that point on, the story was no longer only about the fall, it was also about responsibility. That shift mattered more than some people expected. A public accident is one thing, but the second viewers begin to feel that the aftermath may have included mixed messaging, image protection, or unfair framing. The story opens up into something much larger than one terrible moment on stage, which is exactly why even people who do not usually follow pageants began paying attention. Suddenly, this was not only about a contestant. It was about how a major organization responds when something goes wrong in front of the world, and whether its first instinct is care, clarity, or damage control. Gabrielle's quiet return to social media in February gave the story another emotional turn. She shared photos from her hospital bed and footage of herself doing rehab on a stationary bike, and she wrote that the injury had redefined restoration and renewal for her, and that the fall had shifted everything, which ended up being one of the simplest lines in this story and also one of the strongest because it did not sound polished or carefully packaged. It sounded lived in. You could feel in that wording that she was not trying to turn the experience into something neat. She was trying to describe how completely it had changed the shape of her life. That February update also carried one of the most important details in the whole timeline. Gabrielle had not been able to return to her work as an ophthalmology resident, which means the damage from that night did not stop at pageant duties, missed events, and public appearances. It reached directly into the professional path she had been building outside the spotlight. And that is the kind of detail that makes this hit differently for a lot of viewers. Careers have rhythm. Life has rhythm too, and when something like this interrupts both at once, recovery becomes about far more than healing visible injuries. That is why the release from hospital headline feels so loaded now. People are not reacting only to the words "finally out." They are reacting to everything those words now carry with them. The intensive care, the neurological monitoring, the rehab, the family support, the silence, the missed duties, and the pause in the professional life she had worked so hard to build. Which means the emotional weight behind this update is much bigger than the headline itself. Good news can still feel heavy. In this case, it does because relief has arrived before closure, and people can feel that difference. The latest development in March 2026 sounds encouraging, but it does not sound final. Gabrielle is out of hospital, yet she has not returned to active Miss Universe Jamaica duties. There have been no public appearances added to her schedule, and there is still no clear timeline for when she might step back into the spotlight, which suggests that the people around her are being careful and that her healing is still taking priority over visibility. That silence says a lot. When someone in a role this public remains completely out of view for this long, it usually means the real work is happening away from cameras. Another reason the story still carries an uneasy feeling is the timing around the next pageant cycle. Miss Universe Jamaica has already been moving ahead with plans for the 2026 competition, which is normal from an organizational point of view because calendars, sponsors, and events do not pause. But it still creates a strange contrast when the reigning queen is only just now out of hospital after months of treatment and recovery. The machine keeps moving. People notice that, and for viewers who remember how shocking that fall looked in the moment, the pace of the pageant calendar can feel colder than anyone intended. There was also more pressure around that Thailand trip than many people realized at first. Organizers later said Gabrielle barely made it there in the aftermath of a hurricane, and they explained that a local chaperone had not been sent because contestants are typically handed over to the Miss Universe team on arrival, and sending an additional representative for the full stay would have been too costly, which does not change the accident itself, but does add another layer of strain and instability to the full picture. The trip was already difficult. Looking back now, that detail makes the whole story feel even more fragile. What keeps people emotionally attached to this update is that it brings relief without bringing resolution. Gabrielle is out of hospital, which is undeniably good news. After everything that has been reported about the seriousness of her injuries and the months of treatment that followed, yet there is still no public roadmap for her return. No deep interview explaining how she is doing, and no honest way for outsiders to know when her life will start to feel familiar again. That is why the story still feels active. The fall happened months ago, but the aftermath is still unfolding in the present. There is also a very human reason this continues to hit so hard. People know, even if they do not always say it out loud, that 1 second can split a life into before and after, especially when it happens in public and gets replayed online while the person at the center of it has to live through the long private version of events, the hospital rooms, the rehab sessions, the waiting, the uncertainty, and the quiet work of trying to get strength and routine back again. The internet consumed the fall quickly. Gabrielle has had to live the slow part, and that gap is a big reason this story has stayed with so many people. So yes, Miss Jamaica is finally out of hospital 4 months later, and that is real progress worth acknowledging. The fuller truth, though, is that Gabrielle Henry survived a terrifying public fall, went through a serious medical crisis, stepped away from both pageant duties and her medical work, and is now in a quieter stage of healing that still comes with a lot of unanswered questions. Which is why this does not feel like the end of the story so much as the start of a very different chapter. Tell me what you think happens next for Gabrielle. Comment below. And if you want more celebrity news and real updates without the fluff, like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next.